Welcome to the Survive and Thrive series. I'm Nathan Hurd, Chief Growth Officer with the Oxford Club. And today, we're going to talk about something that is relevant for every person watching. It's something almost all people out there are feeling, and it's something that you have, in many cases, written to me about. But first, let me just say thank you. Thank you for being part of this process. Thank you for making this a dialogue back and forth. You've shared your comments, your concerns, your questions, and please continue to do that because it makes this not a one-way conversation, but a two-way dialogue. Today, we're going to talk about something that I think you can relate to. But let me start with a question. Have you at any point during this whole process, this crisis, begun to feel a sense of overwhelm or fatigue or just burnout emotionally? You know, are you thinking about what is this going to mean? First of all, when's this over? But what does this mean for society? What's this going to mean for future generations? All the things that have happened, all the decisions that have been made. What's this going to mean for the people I love? What's this going to mean for me? You know, this can be overwhelming. But today, I'm going to share with you a frame or a way to frame a lot of those thoughts and feelings that you may not have considered. And I'm also going to share with you the antidote. In fact, today, I'm going to share with you what I believe is the reason we are really here. Last week, we talked about growth, progress, making progress throughout our lives in any way, in many different areas. And today, we're going to talk about the reason for that progress. And that is to contribute beyond ourselves. Now, I'm going to go through what this actually means, what studies show, what the benefits are, and then how specifically we can do something about it. But first, you know, the reason that where most of us are feeling a sense of overwhelm or emotional fatigue is maybe a little bit different than what you are considering. This may be coming out as frustration or anger, but the reality is most of us get the most overwhelmed when we think about the broader implications, when we think about the impact on other people, when we think about the impact on the generations that might come after us. It really comes from a place of empathy. And empathy is a good thing. Empathy is a great thing. But there is a limit. Empathy, as defined as the ability to feel or imagine what someone else is feeling. You know, most of us have a lot of those empathetic feelings, but the solution and the antidote is to eventually shift that empathy into compassion. And here's what I mean. Compassion is that emotion, that caregiver emotion. That's, I don't just understand how you feel, but I want to do something to help. Doing things for other people, as you I'm sure know, can make us feel very good. It creates a win-win dynamic. Not only does the person being helped receive the benefit, but we also feel and get enormous benefit from taking those actions. But it's actually a win-win-win. Studies show that people that receive help or contribution or gifts from other people, their gratitude increases and their desire to go out and contribute also increases. It creates an upward spiral of gratitude, of compassion, and of a desire to pay it forward. Now, I'm going to read a couple quotes here just to bring you a little bit more depth on what acts of contribution, how they actually affect our physiology and beyond. There's evidence that humans during gift giving or giving of themselves during these activities, our brains secrete feel-good chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, which is a compassion and bonding chemical. When researchers from the NIH, the National Institute of Health, looked at the functional MRIs, brain scans of subjects who gave to various charities, they found that giving stimulates the Mesolimbic pathway, which is the reward center of the brain that releases endorphins and creates what's known as a helper's high. This high is as addictive as other addictive habits, like food, drugs, and even sex. This is the same part of the brain that is stimulated by contribution and giving. That's just the physiology of it. There's actually studies that have looked at longevity relative to contribution. And listen to this. According to a University of California, Berkeley study, people who were 55 and older and who gave to 2 or more organizations, and by the way, this was 100 hours a year, which turns out to be about 2 hours a week. This is not an exorbitant amount. Were 44% less likely to die over a 5-year period than those who didn't volunteer, even accounting for things like factors like age, exercise, general health, and bad habits like smoking or drinking. 44%. A research out of University of Michigan study also showed that mostly elderly people, older people, who gave help to friends, relatives, neighbors, had the same impact longevity-wise. A Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center study showed that working towards a goal and feeling like you're making a contribution to society, particularly for older folks, increases your sense of purpose in life, which contributes to both physiological and physical health benefits, which are a wide variety, from sleep apnea to heart health to brain health and cognition, really across the board. Now, it's not just benefits like that, but I would argue that there's an element of selflessness here. It's a concept that I certainly talk about at conferences I've written about, but there is nothing wrong. Much of the wonderful contribution and charity work that's come out of this crisis was driven by people, feeling very distressed by all of this and looking for a way to release some of that distress. As I said earlier, empathy is not a bad thing, but there is a breaking point. And the solution, the antidote, the release is contribution, is compassion, and then action. There's another lens we can look at this through too. Sir John Templeton, which if you've never heard of him, he's one of the most prolific investors, certainly in the last 100 years, perhaps ever, is also one of the greatest philanthropists of all time. He was knighted by Queen Elizabeth in 1987 and became Sir John Templeton. And he's also known to have said that he never met someone who tithed, meaning gave 10% or more of their income per year for more than 10 years. He never met anyone who didn't become wealthy. And that's because this creates a different kind of drive, a different kind of purpose, as was mentioned before. It's funny, especially around money. People believe that if their income doubled, their happiness would also double. And we know that's not true. But what does make a big difference is the way that the money is spent. And we're not even talking large amounts of money. There are great studies showing $5 increments, but $5 spent on another creates long-lasting benefits, far exceeding material possessions or other purchases directed at oneself. Last year, we were at a conference and I had given a talk. And after the talk, I had shared a story of one of our members that I think moved one of the other members in the audience. And after I was done speaking, a few people came up and were talking to me. And there was a gentleman, I'm going to call him Bill, just to protect his privacy, But Bill was standing there and a few others who I was speaking with, and Bill walked up and he had his sunglasses on inside, which just looked a little strange. So I was talking to the other folks, and when there was a pause in conversation, I turned to Bill and invited him in, and he didn't move forward to speak. So I finished the conversations I was having and squared up with him. And I said, Bill, what's going on? I had talked to him the night before, very, very nice. And his chin started to wobble. And he asked if we could step outside, and we did. And as soon as we got outside, he burst into tears. Now, it turns out the story I had told on stage moved him because he had lost his son a few years before. And since then, well, first of all, he started to talk about how he didn't believe he belonged at this conference about wealth creation. As we continued to talk, it turns out that this gentleman had done a number of things, but had really turned towards contribution in his son's absence. For example, he had a huge piece of land and was offered a massive sum, many millions, to sell the land. Now, this was not an especially wealthy man, and these many millions would have vastly increased his wealth, but he declined. And instead, he gave this land to the state where he lived to be turned into a park in his son's name so that family and couples could have great experiences and experience the land and create memories together, which is what his son would have wanted. By the end of our conversation of about 30 minutes, we both agreed that he had a better and stronger reason to create wealth and to learn and develop the skills in the areas of finance because he had contributions and charities that he was involved with that were deeply, deeply meaningful. He was driven by the actions and incidences of his life, and he had now converted that into a strong, passionate, driving purpose. So the reason I tell you this is because, financially, there is so much good that can come from economic stimulation of certain causes. But the reality is you look at someone like Warren Buffett, who's notoriously frugal, and he's giving all of his money away for all his vast wealth. He doesn't live like it, and he's chosen to give most of it away when he dies. Giving, contribution is the reason that we're here. And there are innumerable benefits that can come from it, including, and especially right now, if you're feeling overwhelmed, one of the ways that you can release that is to take some action of contribution, and you'll start to feel better, but you'll, of course, add enormous value to whomever it is you're helping. Now, you can decide to give your time, your money, your voice, your ear, just lend an ear. And this can be to your children, to your friends, to your community. There are to people you don't even know. My family and I have gotten involved with a charity that the long and short of it is they provide clean water to communities in underdeveloped parts of the world that have, think about today, disease. We all know washing hands is so important. We believe in it. We hooked onto it. And this is a great driving force for us. And now it's become even more important with hand washing. But let me just give you one thought as we close about how to proceed with this. Most of the time, people stop short of contribution for one of two reasons. Either they feel like their impact isn't going to make a difference, or they don't know how to get started. And here's my suggestion. Go to Google after you finish watching this video and type the following: COVID volunteering from home, or COVID volunteering in Pennsylvania, if that's where you live, or COVID volunteering and food banks, Whatever it is, that's a great way to get started. And there are tons of incredible options. But also, don't hesitate to just show up a little bit more for your friends, your family, and you're going to get just as big, if not more, benefit from taking those actions, which are so important. I'll leave you with a quote from Gandhi, who said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." Be well. Take care. Please write me and share your thoughts and comments. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Until then, this was Survive and Thrive.